This is my presentation on for the weather and climate Australia, the big dry. And you may just want to work with me because I really don't know what I'm doing when it comes to this technology, but I just wanted to go into several things. I've enjoyed this class. I hope everyone else has too. And Australia is one of the largest continents out there, but it's its own continent, which I love, its own country too, which I love Australia because although I have not visited Australia, I think it's probably one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen. But I want to get into, specifics in my presentation with one city, one small village in particular, and we'll talk about that one in just a second. But I want to talk about why water is a scarce thing in some parts of the world, especially Australia. But I wanted to go into 80%. Sorry about that. 80% of Australians live within 25 miles of the coastal regions. And then, which I found that very interesting, as big as a country that it is, Australia is home to approximately 22 million people, which they have some of the, it's becoming overpopulated since they don't have enough water for everything. Australia's had 5 major droughts in the last century of recorded history. Over 200 languages are spoken in Australia, with English being the country's most spoken language. Surprisingly, Australia is also the most obese country, despite them being a huge sports fan country. Those are just some things I wanted to just give you some background on Australia, and there's a nice picture there. One of the questions is why do we need water? And I think most of us know this. Our bodies are 60% water. Our lungs in particular are 90% water, and our brains are 70% water. Without water, there could be no life, and I think that's important to know in this presentation. Water is definitely the building block of life. So, about 71% of the country is water, even though water, I'm trying to move this thing, I'm so sorry. Even though water is plenty, fresh water isn't something that's readily available to everyone, like I said earlier. As you see here, I'll show you this, you can watch my cursor, this represents all the water in the world, and this small one here represents just how much fresh water is available in the world, which is not a lot, as you see. So that gives you some perspective on the amount of water, and of course that's in perspective into North America and how big our country is already. But I found that very interesting. Many parts of the world experience droughts and water shortage. Even though our own country here in the United States has clean drinking water, for the most part it's become an epidemic in other parts of the world. One town in particular that is in a major water source is in the Great Down Under of Australia. And I think that located in the beautiful Australian outback, of course we all know that it's dry there, and it's called Broken Hill, Australia. And as you see, it's a town that looks very much like any other American town or any town anywhere in the world. But they are under a huge issue that's become a major fight within the politics of Australia, and we'll go into that. As you see here, this is where the small town of Broken Hill is, in the just west of Wales. They're near the border of South Australia. There, the population is 19,048, although many have said that probably around 10,000 have left this town in Australia. The small town of Broken Hill has had an ongoing issue with its water supply for the past century. In 1951, a water pipeline was built to supply water to the mines and the people of Broken Hill. The Menindee Lake, which is nearby, was the water source for many of the townspeople until 2004, when the lake pretty much started drying up completely. See below, this is Menindee Lake in the 1990s here, and I think you'll find it interesting that this is a Menindee Lake in 2015. actually pretty close to the same shot that, and you can see for miles that there's no water there in the Menindee Lake. Residents are regrouping to figure out what their options are to bring water back to their town. One of the great questions is, what happens to water when it disappears? And obviously, water doesn't just disappear, it goes underground, or it retreats to the sea. And as you see here, rest in peace, sent out to sea. Two of the residents there are standing on what used to be the beach there in Broken Hill. In 2013, the lake was actually drained the rest of the way by the Australian government in order to look for underground water. A process was used to look below the ground digitally to see if water was there to be brought to the surface in order to have an adequate supply for Broken Hill. As you see here, what happens is you have a helicopter that will hover over with some electronic equipment. It will find water underneath. As you see, the blue here and the red, those are maps that are actually done digitally, so they can find water underneath the surface. This here is actually a screenshot that I took from a YouTube video. The aquifer process is when a helicopter hovers over a large mass of land, a digital reader of the land sending signal waves into the ground to see if there's water underneath. This would be able to give a mapped out idea of how much water is available and where it's the most shallow. So this object here has things going across. It is a digital reader. It's probably the size of maybe a fourth maybe of a football field, and it's being carried by a helicopter, and it's reading and sending digital microwaves or waves towards the ground and bouncing back to be able to read to see if there's anything underneath the ground. So far, the Australia government has struggled to give Broken Hill an adequate place to deliver water and to find or drill for water. The plan to build a water pipeline from the Murray Reservoir has hit a major political snags and opposition from many Australians, mostly because they don't want to share their water supply. Even the Broken Hill residents believe their lakes were drained on purpose by the Australian government, and they have began asking, and they want answers because they have a lot of questions. And you see here, this is that's actually a pipeline that is going that similar to the one that they want to bring into Broken Hill. The residents of Broken Hill have been livid and broken. In 2013, the last of the water actually stopped coming into their homes around Christmas time. The residents blame many issues, one being drought. We all know are familiar with drought. And erosion has also happened because they didn't know if their water was just not coming back due to erosion. Government plans to decommission the local lakes was something that many of the locals were asking questions about, mostly because they thought the lakes were they were being used for recreational purposes, and they thought maybe they were trying to get people to not come to their area anymore. And I found that very interesting. I felt like it was obviously not an issue. So the local mines were actually using more water than they needed to in their mining process. We'll get on that in just a second, because what was happening is this is a huge mining area, and like I said, I'll touch on that in a second. But they're using a lot of water in their processes. An annual rainfall of 325 milliliters is not enough to sustain life for 19,000 people. Currently, Broken Hill is using a process called reverse osmosis to keep an adequate water supply for the town, but this is not something that will work long term. As you see here, this is the reservoir for Broken Hill, and I'm really sorry about that L in there. It doesn't belong. Here's the process for reverse osmosis. The water goes in, as you see here, applied pressure, and at that point, some impermeable membranes there actually goes through the process, and the water is flowing through there, and it comes out. It's supposed to be pure, but one of the problems with reverse osmosis is that it takes everything out. So it's not exactly, it's clean, but it's not exactly healthy water because minerals, and we'll touch on that, have also disappeared here. Disadvantages to drinking the reverse osmosis water. Um, Broken Hill has major issues is that no fluoride is found in the water for healthy teeth. Minerals our body uses and needs are filtered out of the water during the process. This leads to a vitamin and a mineral deficiency. So, so one of the questions that I asked was, why would people stay in a village or town without a reliable source of water? And as you see here, it's a nice, it looks like an updated, very nice, any town in the world. And that was a question I asked until I figured out that Broken Hill is actually one of the largest, it's actually Australia's largest mining area, with over $6 billion worth of mining projects going on this year in 2015 alone. Jobs are plenty in the mining industry there, but water is not. So no wonder people are staying there in that town of Broken Hill. State government has stepped up and started having town hall style meetings with Broken Hill residents to hear the major concerns over the lack of a long-term water supply. As you see here, this is a town hall meeting. I got this picture from actually Broken Hill's website, and I'm sure that some of these are getting pretty heated when the Australian government is not exactly giving them what they want. Here's a short list, and this was actually something that I found very interesting, and that is that, sorry about that, a pipeline, these are the short list of options that the Australian government and the State Department there has for Broken Hill have given them. The three things are a pipeline with treated water from southern Australia, which, like I mentioned earlier, they're getting opposition from that, from other parts, from southern Australia residents saying, we don't want to share our water with you. A pipeline with water from Murray area, which is on the other side of Australia, to be treated in Broken Hill for consumption. So the water would come in through a pipeline, but Broken Hill would have to treat the water there because it would not be ready for consumption and it would not be clean. It would be, I guess, dirty water. Or refill the Menindee lakes with shallow groundwater. Although my research shows that more than likely this would not happen because when you pull water out, it's going to go away again. So due to erosion or drought, that would be probably a temporary fix. Over $500 million has been allotted to the Australian government for whichever option is chosen of the three. This is a large amount of money. It's the largest amount ever paid out for a single city in the country's history. So as you see here, a lot of people turn out for these things. Broken Hill residents seem to have lots of mistrust when it comes to the governmental plans to bring them clean water. They've shown lots of opposition and have heckled politicians in many of these town meetings. Many people are saying that water isn't the only thing running out in Broken Hill. Maintenance workers on the project are running out of patience. So they brought this company in to start looking at what their options on the water. They start looking at things, and suddenly they're saying, we're not getting paid enough. So now not only do I have water, but the workers who are working on this are demanding higher wages, better working conditions, and recently stopped working this year, literally within the last month, for 24 hours until their demands were met. While Broken Hill is a trickling water bomb waiting to go off, it seems that everything that could go wrong pretty much has. Although there are many issues surrounding the project, it seems that everyone has the same goals. Number one, make sure the challenge of security and water and sustaining water in Broken Hill. To understand how the infrastructure works and that it can be used long term, because you don't want to temporarily fix something and then everything later on they find themselves in the same situation, which would be no water. Provide long term water security and know how to handle any of the issues that may rise again. As you see here, goals are important for everyone to be on the same, the same goal. And just recently, level 5 water restrictions were put in place. This is a sign that I found. It's on the side of the road close by. It says Water restrictions now in place. Please use our water wisely. Water levels now are extremely low, and I would not like to see this where I live, that's for sure. This is actually Menindee Lake now. As you see some here, the water line there, it's very interesting. Broken Hill, Australia is projected to run out of drinkable water completely by January 2016. And with this being November, that's literally less than a month and a half away. So I would not want to be on the receiving end of that, and I hope that they get things done. Thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed my presentation, and I look forward to seeing everyone else's. Thank you.